Okay.
Recording. So I'll call to order a regular meeting of the Willington Board of Selectmen. It's April 6, 2020 at 6:31 p.m. in our new virtual world. So thank you for joining us. I want to remind the Selectmen that in order to keep in compliance with the executive order in this new method of meetings, we need to identify ourselves every time we're speaking with name and title. Excuse me. So we'll have all comments directed through the chair to kind of keep that in a more orderly fashion. And when public comment will only be during the present to speak portion of the meeting, and those who wish to speak then will be asked to identify themselves for the record as well. And for different items on the agenda, relevant presenters will be asked to speak on the topic. And I just ask that you identify yourself for the record as well. All right, with that, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes, and we have 3 sets of minutes. So I will start with making a motion to accept the February 24th, 2020 minutes as presented.
Second.
There's a second by Liza Boritz. Any discussion?
I
All those
would.
in- oh,
I
all
was just
those-
going to be abstaining because,
Okay.
never mind.
All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Right, aye.
John
John,
abstained. Okay, motion carries. The next item is our March 2nd, 2020 meeting. I will make a motion to approve the minutes with the following correction. The meeting was called to order at 6:30 p.m., not 6 p.m.
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, and no opposing. Please abstain, motion carries. And the last was our, oh no. Looks like we have 4. Our March 9th, 2020 meeting. I will move to accept our March 9th, 2020 minutes as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And then, all right, any discussion on the March 9th? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All in favor, no opposed, no abstention. I will ask you to, if you could silence your cell phones during the meeting. Okay, and one more. This was our first virtual meeting. I'll make a motion to approve our March 26, 2020 minutes as written.
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Any discussion? So I want to thank Robin. This isn't the normal means in which to for us to have a meeting, and we knew there'd be a transcription. I will tell you that of the 12 pages of written minutes, it was 100-page transcription. And some of it was similar to if you talk to your Siri. It didn't always make sense. So kudos to Robin for making sense of that. I think she's using an old-fashioned recorder to record our virtual meeting. So any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous, motion carries.
If I may, this is John Blessington. Mike, I have 2 people sent me texts that their screen is still in waiting mode. I think they're trying to get in on this. Is there any way do you have anybody trying to get in, or?
I don't have anybody on this end. We've got 10 people in attending, but we've got 140 open slots.
John, do you know if they're using the current link and not, I know Robin and I got an invitation from you in the wee hours of the morning. I'm not sure it was really sent by you, that used last meeting link.
Um,
Are they trying to call in or on the computer?
I think they're, well, they said their screen is still in waiting mode, so it must be on the computer.
So if they go to the website and if they look up our agenda, the current link is there. So they may want to try that again.
Make sure they have the right meeting ID.
Excuse me.
Okay.
So I see someone else was able to just get into the meeting.
Incidentally, that was a,
Not you.
you know, what happened was I put the meeting on my calendar, and I just copied the last meeting and copied it to my calendar, and I think that said, oh, he's doing a meeting, and he sent it out to you, so that was inadvertent.
What was nice of you to invite us to that meeting.
I thought, well, I thought it was a little rude of you to decline, but
All right. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is present to speak. So Mike is our moderator for this meeting. So if you would like to speak and you're on video, if you could just raise your hand, and then we'll go to anyone who's on the phone and he will unmute you, and just identify yourself for the record. Is there anyone present to speak? Yes. So Mike will, can you see that, Mike? I apologize for my persistent cough.
Okay, Elaine, you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. All right. Elaine Newcomb, 28 Fermier Road. I'd just like to address the budget thing. I'm deeply concerned about the wish list encompassed by the town budget, the CIP document, and the dream of a new school building. We're in tougher times than the country's ever known. The repercussion of the current pandemic will reverberate far into the future. The financial health of the state was already serious, facing payment for decades of poor fiscal management. We will be more than fortunate if we don't lose more than a substantial amount of our small commercial tax base. Families are in dire straits, particularly those who have mortgages to pay and children to raise, and now may be unemployed. The efficiency of a new full-time employee at a $52,000 salary, I assume plus benefits, is a new tax burden. Wishes for new upgrades to fire facilities, school property are on shaky ground, and our right to referendum appears to have been taken away from us. Whatever is finalized as the proposed budget should be submitted to all voters by a mail-in ballot. If there's no moderation of the two budgets at 11.6% and 3.25% increases, those we know of, we don't know about Region 19. It may be the last straw for some of our Willington families. Thank you.
Thank you.
I sent a copy of that shortly ago.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present to speak? Okay, there'll be another opportunity to speak at the end of our meeting.
I
So
think
move along.
the only person who's here by phone is Stuart. I can unmute him and see if he has anything to say now. Stuart, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm on the agenda a little bit later for the
So-
COVID-19 report.
Okay, so you're good there. All right, thanks.
All right, so we'll move along. The next item on the agenda is correspondence. You'll see a list of correspondence in your packet. Apologize, I'm trying to follow along your computer here. And all of those are available in the Selectman's office. You'll notice there are a lot of items that came up towards the end of that list that specifically relate to the COVID emergency. All right, first Selectmen's report. Most of the items I want to report on are on the agenda. I will note that the Finance Department last Thursday and Friday began working directly, sorry, lights went out, on our transition to a new software, Infinite Visions with Tyler Technology. And their formal training will begin as of right now in a virtual setting on May 11th. So we're still moving forward with that. And I just want to note that Mike D'Amato or someone from CHA, formerly CME, will be moderating our virtual meetings. So that will be ours, the Board of Finance, PZC, and if need be, the Board of Ed meetings using their GoToMeeting site. So thank you again for them making that available. That brings us to a Public Works report. So our Public Works Director is with us.
Troy, do you have anything that from the agenda that you want me to put on the screen?
No, that's just my update with that for right now. I
Okay.
think that should be. Yeah.
Okay.
Road sweeping is continuing. We're still doing some roadside mowing. We've started grading the dirt roads now that it doesn't rain. We've been digging up some waterways around town. I've got some prices to fix the guardrail on the intersection of Daleville Road and Daleville School Road. Either a tractor trailer backed into it or somebody ran into it. I called the troop. There was no incident report, so unfortunately we have to have that fixed. And then we just patched some holes around town. Other than that, that's about it.
All right. At our last meeting, Troy, we mentioned that some of the changes we've made at the transfer station going forward, trying to limit any hand-to-hand contact for the safety of our residents, and especially our staff at the transfer station. And you'd noticed that people had dumped a few things, and then you encourage people to hang on to that until we fully open up the transfer station. Have you seen any of that pick up?
A little bit, actually. Today on Latham Road, there was somebody dumped some trash. It was some kind of bulky stuff there. I've noticed the tires. We haven't had any calls or I haven't seen tires around.
Okay.
But other than that, I mean, there is a few spots. It did settle down a little bit. Everybody can just kind of bear with us during these times.
So hopefully that was a one-time incident, because we are still accepting bulky trash, household waste, and household recycling.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move into new business. The first item of new business is awarding a contract for the fuel tank removal and replacement. So as you may remember, we have to remove the fuel tank that's outdated. We were under significant time restraints to award a contract by Deep when the COVID emergency was declared by the state. So I was able to reach someone at Deep, and they gave us an extension until August 20th. With that said, it's still an item that needs to be done. We have all of the information, and so I'm encouraging us to move forward with awarding that particular job. And Mike, I think you should have documents to display regarding the removal.
All right, give me 1 second. This is attachment 1 from the agenda.
This is attachment 1, yes, should be 12 pages total.
Okay.
So our original plan was to fully use steep funds in order to complete this project and new salt shed project. I'm concerned that there's going to be a considerable delay in activity from the state in order to use the remaining funds for steep. We had, prior to COVID, we were able to hold our town meeting to appropriate $100,000 from a steep project. So we have that $100,000, but we're going to need more depending on the contract we choose. So Donna and I had taken a look at our budget to see if we have additional funds, and we would leave the remaining steep funds solely for the salt shed replacement project. So Troy, if you want to speak to, looks like you had sought 3 quotes. You received 2 quotes, and the third one at the last minute backed out.
The first one right here is service station equipment, the one you can see that's on the page. Their price was a little bit more than Crop Environmental. I think we're getting a little bit better of a deal with Crop. If you happen to look at all of the things, I just want to say that service station equipment did put in their quote for a DF tank. and that has been removed out of there. So we will not be getting that tank. It's just currently we'll be getting a diesel fuel tank. That's it.
So which of the prices, if we go, yes, to this page, that would be the either 8 gallon or 6 gallon,
Hold on a second. There we go.
is that correct?
All right, so the total cost for the 8,000 gallon tank on that one is $229,125, and the 6,000 gallon tank is $225,770.
And we currently have an 8,000 gallon tank, is that correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend going down to a smaller tank. I've talked to Stuart, and Stuart can talk a little bit on this too if you would like. I would keep the same size tank due to the fact that if there was an emergency, we have enough fuel to run our fleet for a certain amount of time.
Okay. So the next proposal, I think is begins on page 6, is from Crop Environmental. And this is just for the removal. At
Yeah,
the very least, we have to have a signed contract to remove it, but if we remove it, we need to replace it with something.
So that one came in at, I think it was around 13,000. But if they did the whole project, they would drop $2,000. It was 11,000 and change to do the whole project. And then with Crop's final price, with everything, came out to 179,214 to do the whole entire job. That's removal and a new tank. And that's new software and everything with this price.
Okay, so just shy of 180,000 for Crop and 229,000 for an 8 gallon with service station. Are there any differences between the two? Is there something with one of them we wouldn't be getting with the other?
The only one with service station is that she actually had put on there was 2 fuel pumps, and Crop only had 1,
Okay.
which we really don't need 2 fuel pumps. We're not going to fuel that many vehicles at a time.
Okay,
Other than that, pretty much everything is down. Service station equipment didn't put in new software and stuff. They were going to try to use the existing software if they could, and we wouldn't know that at the time if it would be sufficient enough to do it. So we don't know. That's still an unknown. So the price could go up if we had to put new software where Crop Environmental has new software installed.
okay. And did did service station equipment, did theirs include temporary fuel?
Nope, they didn't include temporary fuel. Crop did for a small rental fee. It was $900 for a 2,000. I think it was a 2,000 gallon tank.
And how long did each of them tell you it would take?
They said, well, they had to both order the tank, so that could take anywhere between 6 and 8 weeks to order it, and it could take between 4 and 6 weeks to complete the job.
How long? Between
4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, so with one of them, we'd have an additional cost of needing to obtain fuel offsite or the rental of a temporary tank. And with Crop, that's included in the total price.
Yeah, in the 179.
Okay,
Yep, 179, 214. Yep.
okay. So I'm going to make, so then Troy, you had also sent us your recommendation.
Yep.
And you're recommending?
I would recommend that we use Crop Environmental to do the job, to do the whole complete job.
All right, so I'm going to make a motion to award Crop Environmental Services a contract to remove and replace the diesel fuel tank at the Public Works Garage in the amount of $179,214.
I'll second.
Seconded by Liza. All right, discussion in this new format. I can't see John or Liza. So, Liza, do you have any discussion, comments, questions? No? Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Scroll along to John. Any questions, comments, concerns?
No, not on this.
Okay. So the first step is that we have to get a signed contract saying we're taking it out. This actually encompasses the whole thing. So this would meet our requirement with Deep to kind of get us out of their bad graces. And I think I mentioned at our last meeting, we were able to cut the red tag off that tank. So we've been using it in this during this emergency. That has not been an issue. So, all right. Seeing any other discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was 3, that was unanimous. All right, I will, so for the remainder of the funding, Donna and I, like I said, had come up with money from within our budget. So we'll be taking that to Board of Finance, looking for a transfer in order to secure all of the funding.
Excuse me, Erica, if I
Yes,
may.
John?
We have some people who were trying to log on and they had the wrong access code. And I think
Okay.
they logged on now. Could we back up to present to speak and give them a shot?
There'll be an opportunity, John, at the end of the meeting. I think we need to stick with this format.
Present to speak at the end of the meeting after everything has been done. It's sort of, all I can say is, yeah, I wish you hadn't done this thing.
Well, while I hear what you're saying, even in this new format, it would be similar to someone who came late to our meeting and they missed the first opportunity to present to speak, and we would continue on with our meeting. So.
But they were late because they were trying to log on with the wrong access code, which had been put on the original agenda. And so I think that's a poor analogy. You know, if they were late because they didn't get to a meeting, a little bit different.
They missed it because they logged on late. And he said they had trouble attending more.
Is it possible, Mike, for you to mute everyone? Yeah, I muted myself. Except John and Liza. Sorry. I think Liza's purposely muted. We have a dog barking issue, so, okay. I think I've stated how my concerns about it. Liza, do you have anything to say on the topic?
I mean, I think it's hard to I think it depends on how many people we're talking about. I mean, if we give 2 minutes to the people who arrived late, I would be okay with that, 2 minutes each. But yeah, I agree that we kind of have to keep moving along with our agenda. But I would be in favor if we want to allow a couple people 2 minutes each to say very quickly what they wanted to say. I would be fine with that.
All right, I'll give one short opportunity if there's anyone present to speak who was not present during present to speak.
All
You're
right.
on video. If you wanted to speak, if you could raise your hand. All right, we'll start here with Mr. Latensix, and just we ask you to identify yourself for the record and keep your comments under 2 minutes.
Peter Latensix, 97 Trask Road. I have 3 questions for the Board of Selectmen. The first question is, have we contacted residents and businesses to determine the extent of the economic impact on them by the virus? Secondly, have we contacted our bargaining units to see if they understand that it will be necessary to suspend raises? And 3, are we taking steps to take advantage of the June 30th extension for the budget process that the state's allowing? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I saw another Peter over in the corner with your hand raised. Oh, wait, you're still muted. Okay, try again.
Am I muted now?
You're
I hope
unmuted.
I
Just
didn't take
identify
out of my
yourself.
2 minutes. This is Peter Tanaka, 125 Mason Road. I'm glad we're using some kind of meeting process here. However, all I got was the the agenda, I didn't get an email with a link, so I have the wrong access code. It took me half an hour to log on once I got a text message from John with the proper code, and I think that may be a problem for others. The other thing is I was wondering how this was affecting our human resources people, not resources, the you know,
Human Services.
downstairs.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present to speak?
Okay, so there are a few people that are on by phone, but so I'm going to push the unmute all. If you don't have anything to say, keep yourself muted. If you have something to say and you're attending by phone, we have a couple of people that don't have a name in yet, so I can't quite tell. I'm going to push unmute so you can unmute yourself, and we'll go one by one. Okay.
This is Lori Semperbon.
We can hear you,
Can you
Lori.
hear me?
Yes, we
You
can.
can.
Okay. I was just going to say, I just looked at the Board of Selectmen agenda, and it had both the link and the code, and I didn't have any trouble getting in by phone. Just, I used the phone number and the code given, and I didn't have any trouble. Just letting you know that. Thank you.
Anyone else present to speak?
Jim Bulick here. I had difficulty connecting using the agenda that was published at the town website. I did finally get the code from John Blessington. I do have one comment. I like to just reiterate what Peter Latinchik said. I think we should take advantage of the deadline that's afforded to us by the governor and delay our budget process 30 days till the end of June as afforded. I do also want to point out that his latest executive order does allow for a delay in payment of property taxes some 90 days. That will certainly put a challenge on our cash flow for the town. And I think Peter Latinchik made a very good point that we should be considering a budget freeze because of that. We have numerous residents that are unemployed, or they're not fortunate enough to be an essential worker, so they're staying home doing their job to halt the spread of this virus. And I think we should be reacting to that and having a very responsible, prudent budget in this time of economic distress. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else present to speak? All right, moving on. We're going to move on to new business. Item A. Oh, sorry. I apologize. Item B, awarding the haying contract for Ruby Fenton Park. I will note we sought 5 bids. We received 1. So I'll open it, and I don't, for those who are on video, it's being recorded. It is still a sealed bid, a sealed envelope. So I will open the 1 bid we did receive, and it was received on March 30th. So we received 1 bid from Brenda Wilds, and the bid was for $411 per year for haying of the above fields of the town-owned Fenton Ruby property. The contract is for a 3-year period commencing July 15th, 2020. Based on the recommendation of the Willington Conservation Commission, I pay half the amount before commencing work and the other half by September 1st, 2020, and the contract will expire January 1st, 2023. The intent is to fertilize 1 to 2 times during the course of the year. I will cut back brush to its current limits 1 time during the course of the year. And we were asking for a description on any plans they will have for the fields. I plan on soil sampling each field if I win the bid to fertilize with exactly what the ground soil is lacking. Fields will be cut twice per year, weather dependent on second cutting. Fertilizer will be added a second time if the soil is extremely nutrient deficient in order to increase second cutting yield. And again, that was Brenda Wilds of 154 Mahaliac Road. Okay, so again, we received one bid. So I'll make a motion to award the 2020 through 2023 Fenton Ruby Hang contract to Brenda Wiles as to her bid of $411 per year.
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Any discussion? Did everyone see? I hope you could all see me open the previously sealed bid. All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries unanimous. Thank you. That's a new way of opening sealed bids. The next item on our agenda is discussing Executive Order 7S, property tax deferral options. So I'm going to share some information that our tax collector is on this call so that she can weigh in. So 7S requires that municipalities participate in one or both of the programs and to notify the Secretary of the Office of Policy and Management prior to April 25th, which program or programs it elects to participate. The determination of which program will apply in a municipality is made by the legislative body, or if the legislative body is the town meeting, by the Board of Selectmen. So we do not have to make this decision today, but I wanted to bring this to your attention. Just prior to this meeting, we received further information from OPM, and I know the tax collectors group is meeting tomorrow to discuss. There are two options, a deferment program and a loan. Let me make sure. A deferment program and a low interest rate program. Again, we have to choose one. It's our choice if we participate in both. So before I share any more, I know Janice is on the line. Janice, do you want to talk about the impact of this executive order?
Sorry about that. Yeah, the options we have, the deferral program will defer payment for 90 days. So we still go into July 1 thinking that that's when, you know, budget passes and payments due July 1 as they normally are. The deferral program will allow people to not pay until October 1. So basically the interest will be deferred for the 3 months instead of just 1 month. I don't have a lot of information about what guidelines are going to be. I do have, from what we got late this afternoon, the people will have to fill out an application and they have to be able to show us that their income has been reduced at least 20% to qualify for the program. The other option we have, you know, we can do one or the other or both programs, is the low interest rate program. This will allow taxes that are due July 1 and interest of 3% per year, which is 0.25% per month instead of the 1.5% now, and that will be for a period of 90 days. If people are delinquent now, which there are still some that are delinquent now, their 90 days of 3% interest would begin April 1 through the end of June. If no payments are made between that time, then they are going to be charged the full 18% interest. Only if payments are made, that's how I'm understanding the new information that was brought forth today. Payments made, they will get the 3% interest. Once they hit July 1, those people who are in a delinquent status now will revert back to the 18%. So until I get further information tomorrow of how we're going to qualify everyone and find out exactly what's needed from everyone to be granted a deferral status, that any questions on that I can't answer yet. I'm hoping to have more information tomorrow.
So we did get, again, it was late this afternoon, and I had a conference call with the governor and lieutenant governor and many of the commissioners, and this came up. And so on the application which they've sent to us, it does for residents, they're basically they're attesting under penalty of perjury that they've suffered a reduction in income of at least 20% due to COVID-19. And then they're being asked to check a box that says, since March 10th, I have either been furloughed without pay, had my hours significantly reduced, or I'm unemployed. And this has resulted in at least a 20% reduction. The question asked by municipal leaders at that point was, what documentation should we be asking for? And OPM at this time has not given us any guidance for that. They said we could ask for an unemployment notice, but there was no specific documentation that they're recommending that we ask for. You almost look at it like it's an honors kind of program, and that they are attesting to this under penalty of perjury. So, and we could extend the program beyond these guidelines, but we can't go any less than these if we choose the deferral program. I certainly have a concern about cash flow that came up with many municipal leaders on that call. Even if we don't choose the deferral program, it's possible that people may not pay on time. And then we'd be in a real pinch cash flow wise. So we have to take that into account. They did say that the 3-month period, though, would, if we chose the low interest, that anything prior to March 10th was still at the 18%. Beginning March 10th forward would be at that 3% annual. And again, that's just for a 90-day period. So what it doesn't do is it defers when the tax is paid. Without interest, it doesn't defer the tax. So the tax is still due. It just defers when you just deferring it without interest. So instead of having that short window in order to pay, you now have 90 days to pay before the interest kicks in. So I don't expect the selectmen to make a recommendation on this tonight. There was certainly not enough time to get you the information between when OPM put it out, but we do have to make a decision on one or both of the programs and have our election choices to OPM by April 25th. So I will be putting this on our meeting agenda for our Monday, April 20th meeting. And at that time, we're going to have to make a decision. And I'm hoping we'll have many more questions answered at that time. So we'll get all of this information forwarded to you so we can begin to take a look at it. John or Liza, do you have any comments, questions?
My dog might.
Well, we'll figure that out. This on 7S, also, did we have a, did I read this right, that allowance of suspension of in-person voting requirements for critical and time-sensitive municipal fiscal deadlines? Does this give us the option of holding a vote on the budget this year?
It does not. So let's say we had, we needed to expend funds to repair the roof in the town hall because it was leaking. And in order to appropriate those funds, it would take a town meeting to do so. This would give us the ability to do that. It's for urgent financial matters at this point. So it wouldn't be for another program. For instance, Parks and Rec has a CIP program where they're planning to put lights in. They've gone through the PZC process. The next step would be Board of Finance and then a town meeting for an appropriation. That would not meet the criteria under 7S because it's not urgent, and we would have to prove it was urgent in order to hold a town meeting. So this is giving us the ability to handle to handle some appropriations that are necessary and urgent and would have a financial bearing on the town, but not to conduct business as usual. And it does not at all impact the budget process. That was defined in a previous executive order, and that process is going through the Board of Finance. There will not be, at this point, there is no executive order that allows for a vote. So the Board of Finance will be charged with accepting a budget for the town. Liza, any comments, questions?
Nope.
Okay.
I
All
have
right, so
no
we'll get this information to all of you and you can begin to digest it. And I anticipate after the tax collectors have met with OPM tomorrow as planned, they may have a little bit more understanding of that. But what is clear is we have to choose at least one of those two programs. All right, anything further from Liza or John? Seeing none. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is we have the Historic District Commission has put forth a name, recommended a name for an alternate. So I'll move to appoint Tyler Hall as an alternate member of the Willington Historic District effective Willington Historic District Commission effective April 6, 2020, expiring January 1st, 2023. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Any discussion? All right, I will thank Tyler for his willingness to serve on the Historic District. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion is unanimous and carries. All right, next item is a COVID-19 update.
Hi, it's okay to use my credit card number. That's why I wanted
you might
to
want
move
to
so it
mute
wouldn't hold
yourself.
nothing up.
Jim Bulick, if you can hear us, you can mute yourself. Okay, I believe Stuart, our emergency management director, is on the line.
Yes, I am.
Okay. You want to share? Do you want me to share the link that you had given to Robin earlier?
Yeah, that'd be one key thing I was going to talk about.
If I can share the screen, Mike.
The governor last week posted some very nice, pretty graphs they made up from the Department of Health, indicating what the expected peak of this COVID situation is. And they kind of did it county by county. So if you want to scroll down on that, Erica, they're making efforts to build hospital capacity. So that's Fairfield County peaking around April 26th. There's no numbers to go with this. This is just kind of in scale to each other. Then picking up New Haven County, notice that's almost 2 weeks later they're peaking out on that one. And then Hartford County's getting even later, about May 24th, slightly lower total number of hospitalizations expected. And Tallinn County, these are based on where people reside. So it isn't necessarily what hospital they go to, but where they live. So you can kind of see in the peak there is, in, almost May 24th, somewhere around there. And this is extending out to the, very end of June, beginning of July kind of thing where they expect it to drop off. Of course, these figures are subject to change, but that's where we're at. The cases in Tallinn County are fairly low if you exclude the figures from the skilled nursing facilities that have had some deaths and multiple infections there, both of residents and staff. Willington, I think, has 2 confirmed cases right now, one of which is in the hospital. So as bad as this is, right now it's, the figures are low, but you can see we still have a long ways to go to get through this. In terms of supplies for emergency services, we're holding on by the skin of our teeth. They're handing out a box here, a box there of either masks or wipes or something like that. But we're starting to see other medical supplies be in very short order or unavailable in terms of gloves, some devices we use to help people breathe and things like that, which in this past week we used 2, but I'm unable to restock them right now because everybody in the world apparently wants them as well. So we do have some challenges there. The call counts are fairly low in terms of the ambulance. Some of these calls go out as a suspected case. We have to treat them as such based on the interview they did with the 911 dispatchers for do they have a fever? Are they coughing? Have they been exposed to anybody else? So we go in with hopefully the proper protective equipment. We are reusing our N95 masks because we have so few of them. So each person is assigned one. And last but not least, our part-time or per diem personnel at the Firehouse, we've lost a few of those to a variety of reasons. One was sent to New York as part of a contingent from AMR ambulance, and she'll be down there for weeks. We had another one that kind of called out today because his significant other works at a hospital and believes she might be infected. She has a fever, so they're going through the testing process now. Another one, their full-time employer said, we want to reserve you for us, and we don't want you working part-time, so we're running short of some part-time staff as well, but we're trying to fill the schedule as best we can.
All right, thank you. I will mention that as of today, Willington has 2 COVID positive cases in town. I can tell you one is hospitalized, and we're working with the local health district, and any more specific information is not shared with us. HIPAA rules are still in place and protecting those individuals' right to privacy. I do know, and Stuart, you may touch on this, the information, there is certain information shared on an as-needed basis with first responders for safety reasons.
Yes,
Correct.
The dispatch center does have a list of addresses that are for COVID positive patients. That information is transferred to the first responders before they arrive on scene. Pretty much at time of dispatch that goes out. Other than that, we have no details in terms of who they are or names or anything like that. But it does warn us if we're going to a particular address. And this is done pretty much countywide with information from the local departments of health.
Okay. All right, and just to keep you up to date, the governor, including today, has issued 22 executive orders. There's wide-ranging items there, and they're continually changing as necessary. There's a link to them on our website under the COVID-19 tab. So if you are on the town website, which I think you can see here on the screen, the COVID information is all here. And there's the link to the governor's website, and you can get up-to-date information. You scroll down, there are links to the CDC, and here, if you can see my cursor, is a list of all of the executive orders issued by the governor for reference. Our park is still open. We have blocked certain items off. Troy, our Public Works Director, and Maureen in Parks and Rec are monitoring the park regularly to see that people are properly socializing out there. So we're still asking that you keep a distance. The CDC now recommends that people wear a mask, so we would encourage that. And really the only people you should be out there with are people that are in your home. So if you're not at home with them, you should not be out in public in groups. We're still at groups smaller than 5. Mike,
One thing I would like to mention is we are tracking expenses related to the COVID emergency at the direction of FEMA. Our finance department and a few others participated in the FEMA conference call last Friday. We don't know if and when any reimbursement will be coming, but there is a process, and it starts now by tracking all the extraordinary expenses. That there are some at this stage of the game, nothing what I would call significant, but to be eligible for that reimbursement, we need to track every penny and where it goes.
Yes. Okay. You can't see anybody anymore. Is it just me?
No, we're here. I can see everybody else.
Okay.
Interesting. Everyone shows paused. All right. Well, maybe you'll come back. I can't see you. So if you're raising your hand to speak, if Mike can see you, I can't see anyone now.
Yeah, just give it a second because we just took the presentation
here.
from you.
Okay.
You may have to,
Perfect.
if you toggle between your chat screen and go back, it might refresh it. It's just because you were just presenting, so it pauses
Okay.
everybody.
I'll give it a few minutes. Okay. Well, thank you, Stuart. We'll continue to work. I will say, so far, our expenses outside of any overtime needs and needs through the ambulance and first responders have been minimal. Although I anticipate we may see things in the social services, human services area as this continues. That's where we may see an uptick in need. And we'll have some IT expenses so far. But other than that, so far, like I said, we are doing well compared to some towns. All right, so the next item on our agenda is discussing the budget. So we spent a considerable amount of time discussing the budget in January and February. And when I say we, I mean Liza and I. Unfortunately, John wasn't with us then. And we approved a budget with a large increase. We felt it had the increases we needed to properly service the town. We've mentioned many times that we know we were underfunded in many areas, and the budget put forth, we believed, addressed those deficiencies. The Board of Finance was at the point of making their appropriations when the state made an emergency declaration. Meetings had to be put on hold while we grasped the seriousness and length of the situation. There's so many unknowns as we continue with the budget process under a modified format determined by the governor's executive orders. It is because of this new format and the uncertainty of our economic situation now and in the immediate future that I have begun to look at our budget again. Specifically, I asked Troy to take a look at the public works budget with the uncertainties that we were facing in mind. While I still believe the items in our original budget are much needed in Willington, I believe that at this time we need to adjust and defer at least one budget cycle some of these items. The new budget run, and John and Liza, you should both receive that you see reflects those cuts. I suggest we take a look at this as a whole and determine if we want to leave our original request in place or move to accept a revised budget and send it to the Board of Finance. I have the utmost faith in our Board of Finance that they will be taking a good hard look at all budgets and weigh the request against the uncertainties we're facing as a town, a state, and a country. So you now have a budget in front of you that has a bottom line that is significantly less than originally sent. Troy was able to reduce between items in the budget and insurance expenditures $248,948, which would now bring the Board of Selectmen budget increase to the increase is $157,040 over the current fiscal year, or 4.5%. And I believe in your packet you have not only the budget, but detail that shows the exact items that Troy cut. And this is just one look. We can certainly go through and take another look if we so choose. And Mike is scrolling through to show you a little bit. That's really hard to see. So I think individually on your own screen, you may be able to zoom in on that. So you can see the increase.
This is
in
Liza. Erica, can
Yes,
Troy
Liza.
walk us through a couple of the bigger elements that he took out?
Absolutely. Troy?
That would be great.
All right, you there?
Yes, go ahead.
So I took out the mechanic position. So that was a big ticket item. Vehicle maintenance, which I think we definitely still need. I put at 75,000 and I brought it down to 60,000. Currently it's at 50,000, so I added 10,000 there. I took out the equipment rentals. Building maintenance supplies, I kept the same. The parts and supplies budget originally was 2,000, and I brought that up to 8,000. And that parts goes.
If you scroll up, Mike, on this, looking at the bottom half of this, of that sheet, second sheet, attachment 2. There you go. Thank you.
Is it legible? You want me to try to make it a little bit bigger?
I zoomed on mine so I can see.
Okay.
I apologize.
It looks good to me, Mike.
All set?
Yes.
All right, so the parts, that was a big one. The asphalt, I kept the same for the first one. The aggregate, I lowered down. That was for our dirt roads. Our dirt roads need some really attention. The traffic control, there really wasn't a plan for that. We do have the radar signs, so I did take that out. That's up to you if you would like to keep that in. Equipment purchases was originally 5,000 and I raised it to 25 and I knocked it down to 15,000. The salt is the big one. It's our budget range is about 56,000. I raised it to 100,000. We did a different mix this year, and with the MS4, the state's trying to get away from using sand and just use pure salt. So we went to a 2 salt to 1 sand mix. I think it worked very well, given the storms that we had. And the next one, both the asphalt budgets are, the 115 is the original, what was from last year, and the 145 for the chip seal asphalt was the original. I raised both of those, but I cut those to keep those the same. I do feel that the roads need some really attention. Given this time, that will keep it that low. And that was kind of basically, those are the big ones. I would say, Erica.
So probably the other big increase, and I know, Liza, we had a lot to talk about the $10,000 in there for traffic control. And while I think we still know there's some work to be done there, without a solid plan in this fiscal year, that's one Troy had originally left in there, and I suggested that we cut that because it's hard to justify something we don't. Last year we had a solid plan. We knew we were going to be looking at one of a couple of options, and this year we didn't really have, and I don't think Troy did either, a solid plan in which way we wanted to go. So it was an area I thought maybe we could cut. Troy, what I see you left in, you cut out the mechanic that you felt was needed, but left in the additional hours for the public works admin assistant. That's in this budget. There's only salary implications because the current employee in that role waives insurance. So there is no additional insurance dollars to gain in this budget, but that's an additional $11,000.
Yeah, I mean, if we have to, it is something that we can consider. He does a lot more than just some administrative stuff. He goes and gets parts for the guys. He plows snow for them. There's a lot of stuff that he does. I think the few hours with eliminating the mechanic position and bumping those hours, I think it is a needed. It benefits everybody. He goes down to the town hall and assists hanging windows, doors, some other stuff like that. So it's just not the administrative work. It frees up the other guys too that are doing something.
So if we accept these cuts and choose to approve this budget and ask the Board of Finance to take a look at this just as their starting point. They're going to take a look at it with their own eyes and let us know what we will and won't receive. It takes our increase from an 11.6% increase to 4.5%. And if we put that with the Board of Education, a whole picture look from the general government, Board of Education, and Region 19, and I anticipate Region 19 at their meeting tomorrow to approve a budget where we are looking at a decrease in approximately 170, close to $171,000. That would bring the overall budget to a 2% increase. So I'll start with Liza.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should, given all that has evolved in the last couple of months, I think we should revise our original submission and go with this new submission with the reduced increase.
John?
We are facing a really at least a recession, and a big recession coming up. By the time all this is over, all the people who are losing their jobs, people who are, so a lot of those jobs probably won't come back. We'll be lucky if we're not in a depression by the end of this. At the very least, we'll be in a recession. We had 11.5% increase, which now we're saying we've cut it down to a 4.5%. A couple of things I've noticed. The public works budget was cut from about $300,000 increase to an $85,000 increase. That's still an increase. No other organization has cut a penny out of their budget. I really think we should have a budget freeze. I think the thing to do in a year like this is redo last year's budget and go with that. And even that might be a little hard on a lot of the people here who are not going to have the wherewithal. We've already been talking about deferring or payments, but we're not saying they're not going to make the payments. Or we're talking about making it a low interest loan instead of a high interest loan if they pay late. A lot of people may not have that money, and I think we need to look out for the taxpayer. And that my suggestion is that we go down and request a so, sorry about that. Where was? Oh yeah, that's my proposal, is that we simply go back to last year's budget. I would also suggest we might ask the governor, send a letter to the governor asking him, since he's doing all these executive orders, which he's basically taken on dictatorial powers, for him to defer all the union mandated increases for the next year.
Call from Demers, Chris.
I'm in a meeting. So anyway, that's my proposal.
So, Liza, speaking again, I understand your perspective. I absolutely believe we should do everything we can to keep costs at a minimum. I do have some concerns about the idea of freezing everything, since we had multiple conversations with departments who are really just doing their due diligence now to bring their budget up to what they're actually spending. That was sort of the main point of our conversation over the last couple of months, is to just make the budget reflect what's actually being spent without much for increases at all. I think the reason to take a look at the Public Works budget more closely is because there was a much more significant percentage of increase proposed in that budget, which at the time we didn't know that this was going to be what our reality was come, early April and for the foreseeable future. So it made sense to entertain that notion. But now I think we're in a different space. I also have concerns about freezing the salaries. I think it's a double-sided, coin. If we're concerned about a recession and then we continue to freeze the salary of our staff, we're adding into that recession. So, I mean, I think there's multiple conversations to be had around that point. So I think my suggestion is we go with this and put forth to the Board of Finance. And if the Board of Finance has further recommendations, they will let us know.
I hate the idea of freezing salaries. I'd love to see everybody get a raise. But, through the years of the Obama recession, every year we had people who lost their jobs or got their hours cut, had to find a new job which was paying even less. This is all in the private sector. And yet in the government sector, everybody got their raise, their 2% or 3% every year, because they're important. They're in the government and they don't have to worry about a profit motive. We just can raise taxes to pay that. I hope we're not going to go through this again. I'm not feeling that we can go to the person here who's lost his job and trying to get along and say, hey, you got to pay more because our government workers need a raise. Yes, they need a raise. I understand that. So does the person who's being asked to pay this money. As far as everything else goes, can we make cuts? Can we maybe do a little bit less? We've increased the rec commission. Okay, the rec commission is a wonderful thing, but we're hurting for money. Can we ask them to do a little bit less? Can we ask I don't know, when we get to the education side of the house, that's going to be interesting, because right now there are people who probably don't have a whole lot to do. I know the teachers are still teaching.
So
I want to say a couple of things, John. First of all, we don't know yet that we're in any different of a financial situation today than we were yesterday. We suspect that we will be, but we don't have that information today that we're in any different financial situation. Sorry, go ahead, Erica.
I've asked for numbers from the Department of Labor as far as unemployment, and as you can imagine, they have such a backlog. They don't have those numbers for us yet, and as soon as I get them, I will pass them forward to both this board and Board of Finance so they can use that information in the budget making process. They have February numbers posted, but they clearly state they do not reflect COVID-19. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions.
Okay, and I will, I think we can pretty much guess. We can say, oh, let's not worry about it, maybe it won't happen, but I think it's going to happen.
That's not what I said.
We are worried about it, John, which is why we took a different look at this budget. What we don't, as a Board of Selectmen, we do not have a say that this is going to be up to the Board of Finance to determine the education side of things. That'll be the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance ultimately. The Parks and Rec is not under the Selectmen's budget, so we can't take our red pen to certain budgets, but that's not to say that the Board of Finance isn't going to take a hard look at all of these. I think what I'm saying is there are some things we need to do. There are some increases in here aside from salary that are clearing up some items that are increasing because they were deficient prior to, and so we needed to really shore those up. And so you see some of those increases. Electricity increases, fuel, we are locked into some of those prices. There are some things outside of salaries, and I recognize that's a hot button issue that while there are increases in this budget, it would not benefit us to slash them at this point. I have reached out to the union to see what we can do. We should be beginning negotiations on that contract and see if we can open a dialogue in an interim process. So that has been addressed as well. And so we'll see where the union stands on that. There have been other bargaining units, I apologize, I don't move, where we've seen some movement in that direction, so we can wait and see. But we knew that our largest increase came in Public Works. So I could probably take a look at a couple other small items in the Selectmen's budget, which is the first portion on page 1 of our budget. We added in $500 for moderator services for our town meetings. We could take that $500 out and revisit that situation next year. It's not a large cut, but it is a cut where it's not something we have, it's something we've added, and we could take a look at that again next year if need be. It's always an issue, but you know, I certainly, if I had a place to look at something like that, we can go through this line by line, or we can put forth what we've cut and then meet with the Board of Finance and hear what they have to say. They're going to go line by line through our budget as well and work in that direction. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve an amended Board of Selectmen budget at $3,646,061. That represents an increase of $157,040 or a 4.5% increase.
Second.
Seconded by Liza. Discussion?
I don't have much to say. I think that's a big mistake.
Well, and again, John, this isn't the final piece of the process. There's still more layers of this process to go through. So, and I mean, I don't even do we have the ability to say a freeze, townwide freeze? Isn't that even the Board of Finance's responsibility to say townwide freeze?
So I put a freeze on spending on the Selectmen's side of things here in the town hall in the current fiscal year when we declared, when I declared an emergency, but a freeze going forward, we have to set a budget. So I think when John says a freeze, he means let's use the same exact dollar amount we used this year to move forward. And that's assuming that the union would agree to no increases, and that's a risky move to make. And not plan for that. We have an insurance unknown still that's built into this budget.
Well, and I remember we had a conversation a while back about all of the pieces of the budget that were really like sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, voluntary increases. And anything that was like you said it before, it was gas, electricity. It was all of these services were required to purchase that were increasing, and the cost of mail, the increase in the election expenses, the only things that were optional, it reflected like a 0.03% element of the budget. So, I mean, I think this conversation is a little bit in vain, because the majority of the increases were required of us anyway.
Right. And we
Unless
may
we
need
decide not to pay our electricity bill.
right. We may need increases in human services when some of this flushes out. We may see increases in election on both the registrar and the town clerk side, depending on when a primary is actually held, if it gets pushed off farther than June 2nd into July 1, or what that would mean for a November election. If the data that was brought to us were this, we could see 3 waves of this and something else happens in the fall, we would see increases in those departments if they choose a different method for election purposes. So there may be some places where we need more funds and not less, but there are so many unknowns now we would be grasping. And we may be able to cut in places if those things come to fruition. But to say we're going to use last year's number would be really challenging. And that's not to say that's not what the Board of Finance is going to do. There, I said it before in my statement, I have the utmost confidence that they're going to take all the time that is allotted to them and go through this process and have very serious conversation about it.
Well, I would like to go back a little bit to what Liza said. Yes, you're right. There's still one more process to go through here. Let's go to the Board of Finance with this. I will point out the final say in this, the final judge in this has been taken away from us because we are not going to have a referendum. So the people really don't get much to say about this. And those, so we're going to have to trust to the Board of Finance, and I'm sure that's going to be an interesting fight this year.
And they will be having public hearings. It'll be important that they hold a public hearing so as to hear from all of the voices. But I want people to understand that the decision on how the budget could be handled so that towns could still have a budget going into next fiscal year was taken into account the safety of our residents as well as those people who work at the polls. So this wasn't just to take our rights away. There were a lot of layers that made this decision necessary, and I think we can't discount that. It's discouraging that we don't have the same process and people don't have the same manner of voting in a referendum. I understand that, but there are so many unknowns with this particular emergency and this virus that I don't think they have a safe way of voting, whether it be in person or even at this point by mail, to adequately ensure the safety of our residents and our poll workers.
I don't know. I don't see why sending an absentee ballot to each registered voter is not a good way to do it. But apparently, we're not going to be given that option.
No. And that's the fundamental piece, what you just said, John. Like, we can have ideas and generate the ideas here in this meeting, but we're not the ones who actually get to make that decision. I don't like the fact that we're not going to a referendum and a vote. It's not what I choose either. That's irrelevant. That decision was made for us. That wasn't a decision that we made. So.
And I would say if something changes before we've decided on a budget and we're given the opportunity, we find a way to vote in the normal manner. If the situation changes between now and when the Board of Finance. Oh, Suzanne. So Suzanne is our Republican Registrar of Voters. Go ahead, Suzanne. We can't hear you.
Hit your unmute button.
No, she's unmuted.
Is she? Well.
We can't hear you.
I think that there's more to it than just mailing an absentee registered voter.
I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties hearing Suzanne.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, wow. Let me try my volume. Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I can. Now I can't.
I don't know.
Well, whatever you're doing right there, now we can hear you.
No, there's a
It's not
significant
just,
lag.
Yeah,
yeah.
it might be a bandwidth issue.
Yeah.
Oh, good. It's not just about mailing an absentee ballot to every voter, because grand list, people that have property on the grand list are also eligible to vote. So to mail, can you hear me now? No? No.
So I think what she's saying is just to mail in an
So
absentee vote to registered
we can't,
voter.
the cost.
All right. So I think what Suzanne is trying to share with us is that it's more than just mailing an absentee
So
vote to a registered
it would
voter.
be a significant cost to mail an absentee ballot to every registered voter and every property owner on the grand list. That's something that would be overwhelming to the town clerk's and registrar's office, not to mention the cost involved. It would be ridiculous.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Um,
All right, so bring us back to the motion on the floor is whether or not to approve this amended budget to send forth to the Board of Finance. And I don't know that there aren't other departments looking at their budgets and doing the same. There's been no request from the Board of Finance for anyone to do so. But I think it was important that we go ahead and take a look and recognize where we're at, and that maybe this current fiscal year is not the time to make some of these bigger changes. All right, so John or Liza, any other discussion on the motion?
just to answer Suzanne. So I understand the grand list problem, but so what we're saying here is rather than have the vast majority of the voters vote on an issue, it's better to have no vote at all. And I disagree with that.
I think that was just one piece of the conversation, John. I don't think that's at all what Suzanne was saying.
I know you also said about the cost, the expense.
Right. There's cost, there's overwhelming need. And right now, listen, there are people out there that are afraid because of the unknowns. They're afraid to touch their mail. They're afraid to touch packages that come to their home. We'd be talking about asking our staff to go through thousands now of ballots that they're unsure of, and could we ensure their safety? I think there were lots of questions. We didn't make this decision. This was made above our heads. And it is certainly at this point the cards that we've been dealt, and the process has been laid out for us. But if things were to change, like I said before, the Board of Finance, I think we would need to take a look at whether or not we could go back to the process, which, excuse me, we typically use. But right now, the process we have is that the Board of Finance, as we directed last week, yes, was that last week already, or 2 weeks ago, to they are to determine the budget. So again, I'll mention the motion was to approve this new revised budget and send forth to the Board of Finance. Any new discussion? Okay. So I'll ask all those in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No abstentions, motion carries. So we'll get this information over to the Board of Finance. I do anticipate the meeting this week. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the school building committee. We began this process with the intention of moving forward in a timely manner with all selectmen at the table. We now have a full board present, but with the current emergency declaration at the state and local level, I do not believe this is the time to hold these discussions. I want the process to be open and transparent, and I recognize that this meeting forum is unusual. And although we are making the ability to view our meetings available, we may not reach all of those who choose to weigh in on the process. It's my advice that once we are not under an emergency declaration, we pick up the process as soon as possible.
I would agree with that.
I just wanted to address it so that if we start dropping this from our agenda, that people understand why and that we would pick it back up again. But I know besides our office, certainly, and the superintendent is on the line here, the schools and the Board of Ed are in a challenging time on their own. Phil, did you have anything you wanted to, sorry, mention? So I think Phil is in agreement that right now our priorities have to be in other places. And this is a larger discussion than I think this forum was made for. So unless anyone else feels that way, it won't be on our agenda, but it'll be on the list of things to talk about when we get back to normal, whenever that may be. Phil, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to know, I think it makes sense because we've kind of, this will be the second time we've asked for volunteers and to put them on hold. I think it's important to communicate that out to the individuals that applied.
Yes.
And, you know, I think you all need to determine if it's going to be another search, or are you just going to go from the same pool? We don't have a time frame right now, unfortunately. You know, I think that could play into it. So I'm just curious to know if the letter would say if there would be a new search or not.
I would like to stay with the search that we had. I think we are just pushing pause on the process and then pick right up from there. And so we could send a communication to them now, and then we pick the process back up again, let them know that we're starting if someone wanted to withdraw their name at that point, but that we would stick with the pool of applicants that we currently have.
Okay, thanks.
John or Liza, do you have different feelings about that? Liza shaking her head no. John, no as well. All right, so thank you for that. All right, this is the opportunity we have present to speak again. If you are, if you would like to speak, I ask you to limit your comments to 2 minutes. And Mike will unmute those that are on here on camera, even though we can't see you, and we'll start with those folks. So if you raise your hand and we can see you. If you'd like to speak, I just ask you to identify yourself for the record. Anyone present to speak at this point?
Okay.
All right, yeah. Peter, L. One second, Peter, you're still muted.
All right, you're unmuted on my end, but you may be muted on your
You
end.
need to unmute yourself, Peter. I just need you to unmute yourself. The bottom, if you scroll over. There you go.
Thank you, Erica.
You're welcome.
Peter Latinchich, 97 Trask Road. I'm almost at a loss for words, which is unusual for me. I'm particularly struck by Liza's comment that there's no reason to believe this is different from any other financial situation. I beg to differ. We're clearly in a time of extraordinary economic hardship for both our residents and our businesses. And I'd like to think that we wouldn't treat the budget as business as usual. Going from an 11%, which is typically what you expect from municipalities, they come in high, thinking they come in the mid-range budget. We get that in a normal year, folks. This is not a normal year. This is not business as usual. And for this board to pass a 4.5% increase at a time of this kind of hardship is really difficult for me to understand, and to defer to the Board of Finance seems to be abdicating the Board of Selectmen's leadership responsibilities, I'm deeply disappointed. Thank you.
Anyone else present to speak?
Yep, I think,
Elaine, I think you would need to unmute yourself.
all right. I think you're
Go
good.
ahead. We can't.
Elaine Newcomb, 28 Fermier Road. I believe it was Janice mentioned something about relative to the delinquent taxes, and I was curious to find out as of actually prior to a lot of this current situation, how large a chunk of the tax base that delinquent tax is. I had a second question about the relative to the schools. Are the lunches we're providing to all the kids, is that doing something to this year's budget beyond what was expected in terms of an unexpected increase? And then there was mention of the public hearing on the budget, and I'm trying to wrap my brain around how that's going to be done with any kind of widespread participation. If you could, I don't know if that has been determined yet, or what is thought to be a possibility for really hearing a wide range of comment. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I will defer any conversation about the school, the Board of Ed budget to the Board of Ed, and they are meeting next Tuesday, but I did see the superintendent shaking his head no, that the lunches did not have an additional impact on their budget. But again, any Board of Ed spending questions should be directed to the Board of Education. As far as your other question, which was a public hearing, again, the Board of Finance will direct this, but there's specific language that they need to send out when they post an agenda, and it's a public hearing. They have to give an email address and a place for individuals to send comment to, either that email or mail in. So they have to give them enough time for that to happen. So when they set their public hearing date, there has to be enough time so that if someone can't attend in person, similar to a normal meeting, that they have time to get their comments on the record in an email or mail-in form. So they'll be using that language when they go through their process.
Are you assuming that every people would be able to assemble?
Absolutely, no. It would be in this virtual. It would be in this meeting format. There are no in-person meetings right now; those have been suspended. But so it would give ample time for someone who couldn't attend in this manner or choose not to either email in comments to be on the record at the public hearing or to mail them in. And the agenda posted for that public hearing would have that language on it. Already I've seen that used. There's a public hearing tomorrow for Region 19's budget, and they use the similar format. So that budget, that agenda and information would have to be more than 24 hours available so that people have an opportunity to mail in comments. So the Board of Finance will dictate that process going forward, but following the guidelines from the executive orders.
And the delinquent taxes was the other question.
We can look and see if we can get that information from you. I'm sure Janice, I can see, is at home attending this meeting, so I'm sure she doesn't have that number at her fingertips. Okay. But we can get that for you.
But that number is prior to the current troubles, correct?
Well, correct. It's in the. We're looking at the 2018 grand list. Thank you, Jen. We're looking at the 2018 grand list. Moving forward will be the 2019 grand list. So yes. So there are people that are delinquent in the current tax year. All right, is there anyone else present to speak?
I would like to make one point of clarification. I think if everybody goes back and looks at what I actually did say, at no point did I minimize the financial challenge that we are experiencing. I said we cannot currently quantify what that is. We don't have any concrete information at this point about the impact to our budget. And so thus, we don't have concrete information to make decisions off of. So I wanted to make sure that my point was perfectly clear and because there have now been 2 comments that have suggested I am assuming there is no financial impact to the town, which is not anything I've ever indicated. So I wanted to clarify that very important point.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in video present to speak? You can unmute yourself. All right, anyone on the phones, Mike will unmute you, and anyone present to speak.
Everybody should be able to unmute themselves if they're on the phone or they're.
If you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself, identify yourself for the record, and Peter, go ahead. Can you, oh, hang on, Mike, can you unmute Peter Tanaka down there?
I got it.
Okay,
I just had to click on the right part of the screen. Correct
just
part.
identify yourself, sir.
As I understand it,
Identify yourself for the record, please.
Oh, Peter Tanaka, 125 Mason Road. As I understand it, at the beginning of this meeting, I indicated that I had a real hard time logging in, and Lori Semperbond said that she had no problem logging in. From what I understand, there was an amended agenda that was put out later today, and I was using the agenda that I printed 2 days ago, so that may be the issue. And I think that we need to really make sure that if we're doing online meetings, that we make the online meeting information correct.
I agree, and I apologize. There was an issue with that. I had some concern. I see Robin looking like she's going to unmute herself. I had some concerns with whether or not we could hold this meeting tonight because there was an issue with the code for the meeting. And Robin, I think, may speak to it. She reached out to both one of our attorneys at Halloran and Sage, who helped write some of these executive orders, and to FOI. And Robin, their comment to you was?
They said as long as I fixed the code as soon as possible, which, disclaimer, I had no idea that the codes were different, and I was looking at a different code on the original agenda. I used a template for the basic wording of how the virtual meetings are posted, not knowing that I had inadvertently copied last week's link code to this week's agenda. So that I take full responsibility, and I do apologize.
I assume that's what happened, Robin, and thank you for your apology. The only other thing,
take on it was as long as we had the right code at the time of the meeting available, someone could look at.
Right. And I had the code on the agenda, but I did not have the code as a clickable link on an email, so that I had to type the full thing in every time. Also, this is the first GoToMeeting I went to, so I wasn't sure that it was not me that was at fault rather than the code, which caused some additional confusion. I think that as we all as a town are learning this, that perhaps we should give maximum leeway.
Yes, and we, this is our second GoToMeeting, and we now know that this could be an issue, and we'll scrutinize those codes before we put them up. And our next meeting, we're going to try to do a little bit more in advance if possible. And so we'll just try to be a little bit more vigilant about that. So we apologize. All right, anyone else present to speak? Okay, I see our Parks and Rec director on the phone. Was there anything you wanted to add about activity at the park?
Hi, this is Maureen. Everything has been great down at the park. People have been social distancing. I have not seen any issues down there at all. When I see residents down there, I do make a point of talking to them, making sure that they do understand, which they do, and they are grateful that the park is still open to them, so that they can continue to walk and use the fields. But no issues. I haven't seen any issues down there.
Great, thank you so much. I think they, heard all our warnings, and I think they've, kind of grasped the seriousness of why we've made some of the changes that we made, not because we want to, but because we're looking at everyone's safety.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. All right, if there's no one else present to speak, I'll move on to good and welfare. Okay, I have several items. So John or Liza, if you have anything. Okay. We'll start with a reminder that the town office building is closed to the public, but our offices are all staffed. There's either someone here in the building or working offsite. Many of our staff members are working from home, connecting to their computers here. You can still call or email the department that you need. And if in-person service is required, it will be handled by that department. So you can go to our website at willingtonct.org to see a link of departments, both email and phone. If you drive by the town office building, you'll see the Donate Life flag was raised Wednesday, April 1st. April is Donate Life Month, and the flag will remain up through the entire month. I believe it has not been posted, but I believe there will be a Board of Finance meeting this Thursday, the 9th. So keep an eye out for an agenda or go to our website to look for the agenda for that meeting, and it will have the meeting code for their meeting. The same goes for BOAA. They'll be meeting on April 22nd. They had one more meeting scheduled when when the process for our meetings changed. We made the unfortunate decision to cancel Willington Day this year. It wasn't an easy one, but with the uncertainty surrounding public gatherings and the amount of work and time needed, we had to make that decision and figured we'd rather do it sooner, not later. And anyone who had signed up and already paid for a space can either receive a refund or carry it over to next year. So let's just hope next year we can make Willington Day a bigger, better event when we can all be together. Let's hope. I want to wish anyone celebrating a happy Passover and a happy Easter. See our website, I think I showed here on the meeting, for information and links to COVID-19 information. I also want to remind people to continue to be vigilant in your home. Lock your vehicles, your other personal belongings. There seems to have been a little bit of uptick in activity of late. And so I'll remind you again, lock your vehicles and don't keep personal items in your car. No personal property. If they can see it, it's just another deterrent to try. Our next regular meeting should be Monday, April 20th. We're going to try to stick to a regular schedule. And I want to take a minute to thank all of our first responders, first line healthcare workers, and all other essential workers. Those in the grocery stores, that are, the post office, that are still making sure that essential needs are getting there and that people are getting healthcare services they need. So they're on the front lines of this event. While we're focused on town activities, they're still making sure that we're safe and taken care of. So thank you to all of them. And I encourage you all to stay safe and stay home. And John or Liza, do you have anything else for good and welfare?
No.
All right, seeing none, I will move to adjourn at 8:14.
Second.
Seconded by John. All in favor? Fine. Thank you all, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.